Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Today I'm going to try to speak above my neighbor's TV. I'm hoping that you don't hear it in this video, but I wanted to talk to you about homeschooling a child who hates math. When you are out in the homeschooling community, a lot of times you will see either products or companies or sometimes bloggers who are going to come at you and they are going to tell you that they have all the answers on helping your homeschooled child love math, if not at the very least not hate math anymore. And you know what? People who make absolute promises like that they will absolutely make your child not hate math anymore, or they will absolutely help your child start to enjoy math, you cannot always believe them. They're trying to sell a product. What I'm going to try to do though is I'm going to try to share some realistic tips on how to help make math more tolerable to your children who really don't like it very much, and there are a lot of adults who don't like math either, and hopefully that there will be some children who will get to the point where they do not hate math. But I think it's really important that even as a homeschooling community that we realize that there are different subject areas and they are going to work better for different children. So just because one child is good at math doesn't mean that all children are going to be good at math. Just because one homeschooled child is good at history doesn't mean that all homeschooled children are good at history. As with everything else, children are individuals, and yes, they are going to have certain gifts and inclinations that other children their age or other ages or even adults do not have. And math is really one of those polarizing subject areas where a lot of times people might jump in the homeschooling thinking, okay, you know what? My child hates math so much in school, I'm going to make them love math. And the truth of the matter is that while you may certainly be able to improve your child's relationship with math, there is no guarantee that you're ever going to get to the point that your child jumps at the chance to do math, although it has happened. I don't want to discourage you too much, but yeah, I always say I'm about being realistic. But again, I just want to share some tips that I have used with my own children, because yeah, I have some children who will tell you that math is their favorite subject, and I will have other children who will cry even still, when they are doing their math lessons. And I just want to go over some ways to help you avoid that, which unfortunately it is inevitable that it's going to happen sometimes. But the first way is to keep your math lessons short. I know a lot of times the math lessons that you're given in your homeschool curriculum, or when kids are in school, they're given like a whole mess of math problems. Sometimes 25, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for example, if they're doing long division, 25 problems is a lot. Or sometimes they might even have 30 or 40 math problems that they have to do. And for those children who jump at the chance to do math and who love it, that probably wouldn't be an issue. But for those children who really do have a hard time with math and who really seem to are revolted by the very mention of it, keep your lessons short. Depending on your child's age, if your child is younger, even 5 minutes of math a day is plenty. And when your child is up, I should say teen, is up in those high school years, sometimes even 15 to 20 minutes of math is enough for them. The important thing is that your child is understanding what they are doing. They are retaining what they are doing. If they are spending so much time complaining because their math is taking them so long, you can be sure that they are not going to remember what they're doing. They're not going to want to remember what they're doing. They just want to drive through it and get on to the next lesson. So the second tip that I have for you is that it's okay to repeat the same math lesson. A lot of homeschoolers just have this affinity for finishing curriculum by a certain time, by the end of the year or by a certain month. And you know what? Sometimes that just isn't going to be possible, at least if you do want your child to understand what they're doing. So if you are a box checker, you might feel like you need to go ahead and do a new lesson every single day with your child in math, but sometimes that's not really the best thing that you should be doing. Sometimes you really do need to repeat the same lesson until your child is comfortable doing it. And sometimes that might even mean 3 or 4 times of doing the same lesson. You are not failing your child when you are having them repeat the same lesson. In fact, you are helping them even more rather than pushing them through with a concept that they don't understand just so that you can get that box checked. I'm going to say it again. It's okay to repeat lessons, even several times. The next idea is just to use fun manipulatives. Now, this is something that's probably better for younger children, but I used to use Shopkins for my kids when they were learning how to add and subtract and even multiply. I wanted to use something that they played with in everyday life and that would hold their interest and that they might even be able to take in their free time and practice with on their own. And Shopkins was the thing for us. Now, I have heard of other families who use candy, some people who use Legos, and yeah, sometimes you can even go out and buy math manipulatives, but for me, I found that it was more economical and even more fun for the kids just to pull out some of their toys. So I've even used crayons and used those as math manipulatives to help them understand those more abstract concepts that they just might not be developmentally ready for yet. The next idea is to focus more on real world math. Think about how you can teach your children to use money, to weigh things at the grocery store, to balance a checkbook depending on their age. How you go about dividing things, for example, when you are baking or when you are setting the table even. Always take a look around you and see how you are actually using math in your everyday life that you might not even think about, but point these ways out to your children. It is going to help them make the connection that math isn't something that is just supposed to make them miserable sitting at a desk doing in front of a textbook or in front of a computer. Math is really something that they are going to use in everyday life, and it is going to be helpful if they are, if they have a good knowledge of how to get those basics done. So another idea is to use board games with your kids, or if you're comfortable, online games. There are so many board games out there that you can have fun as a family, but that will also reinforce your children with their math. Yahtzee is a great one because not only are they, for example, doing multiplication when they are rolling the dice and counting it all, they're also adding. They're adding up the scorecard. They are learning about strategy there. So Yahtzee is a fantastic one for math. Even Monopoly. Monopoly is good for economics, but it is also good for math. You know, who wants to be the banker? So they get to dole out all that money. They get to decide, okay, how much change does this person get back? Oh, this person has to pay this tax. How much do I have to give them back now because they paid it? So just because something is fun doesn't mean that you can't use it for homeschool. And, you know, this has a name. It's called game schooling. And the same thing goes with the online games. There are a lot of online games that incorporate so much math. Minecraft is just one of many, but really, Minecraft is my kids' favorite, and they will always point out to me, Mom, Minecraft is educational. And I have to admit that it really is. Another tip that I have is know when to back off and redirect. Sometimes, even if you have done a short lesson, sometimes if you've even repeated the lesson, use manipulative, sometimes you may have pretty much used everything that you had in your homeschool parents' toolbox, and you still might get to the point where your child ends up in tears of frustration because they just don't get it. And sometimes it might not even be because they just don't get it. Sometimes even if a child has just had a stressful day and they just can't think straight. And, you know, as an adult, you know that we have those days. There are days that so much stuff has just been going on that when we sit down and try to concentrate on something, it just won't click no matter what we do. Kids have those days too, and you have to really be open to kind of redirecting when that happens. This actually happened for me yesterday. My daughter, it had been her third day of doing this lesson, and she was doing well the second day. She was really getting a good grasp on it, but she asked me, hey Mom, I'm going to do this for a third day, but this time I don't want you to help me at all. So I said, okay. So I backed away and I was ready to not help her at all. But she had had a lot of stuff going on earlier in that day. And as she was sitting there trying to figure it all out, and I even did try to step in and help her, she just admitted to me that she was so stressed out from everything else that had happened earlier in the day. She couldn't think. And she did get very upset. And that was when I said to her, you know what? Why don't we put your math lesson aside? We will finish this tomorrow. How about if you go and you make those chicken wings that you wrote down the recipe for and that we just got all the ingredients for? Why don't you go make dinner? That can be, you know, your homeschool lesson in place of math today. And so that's what she did. And it lifted her spirits. She was still able to do something, you know, not only educational, but something practical and useful. She was able to serve her family. And it also gave her a day to just breathe and to know that it's okay and we can move on and we can do this math lesson at a time that she is more mentally able to do it. Another tip that I have is don't do teachable moment overkill. Does that make sense? So a lot of times we homeschooling parents are so into those teachable moments because we want to. And I say that all the time, you know, life is education. So everything that you see around you, you are learning from. And I think that sometimes we can really take that to an entirely different level and we can go overboard with it. And I saw a really good example of this. It was several years ago, and it wasn't even a homeschool mom. It was just a mom whose daughter was in a traditional school, but she was helping out at Awana, and so all of the kids who were coming through buying stuff with their little Awana dollars, even the younger kids, she would have them, you know, counting out how much money they had and how much each of their items cost and how much change they should get back. And some of the kids were all for that. But for other kids, I could see that they were tired. They had been in school all day and then they came home and then they went to Awana and now someone was here drilling them on math when they just wanted to buy their prizes, and she wouldn't let them go. She kept going and pushing and pushing and pushing, and she would not let them get what it was that they needed until they could give her an answer. And I wanted to tell her, just stop. But really, even we homeschool moms, I'm sure that I have done that at some point, where you want so badly to take advantage of the learning opportunities around you that you just don't think about the fact that you're probably doing the exact opposite of what you meant to do. Another idea that I wanted to share with you is that your child's grade levels are less important than their retention. This is something that's really important in math. Your child does not have to be on their exact grade level if they are not developmentally ready for it. Just because your child is in, say, 4th grade, it doesn't mean that they have to be doing math on a 4th grade level if they are not mentally prepared for it. Now, first of all, one thing that I have to point out that I have noticed over my 13 years of homeschooling is that homeschool math curriculums they do seem to be more advanced than those that are used in public schools. So we'll get that out of the way right away. So what might be 4th grade math in a homeschool curriculum might be more like 5th or 6th grade math in a traditional school. And that's just what I've seen from experience. But again, the fact remains is that number on your child's book of where they're at, that's not what matters. What matters is that they understand what they're doing. If you're giving them things that are too advanced for them, it is going to hold them back later on down the line when they need to use those concepts and then add them on with other concepts. If you let your child learn where they are at, you can bet that they are more likely to catch up in the end because they have had that solid foundation than if you just push them through just so that you could say that they had finished a book on their, on their grade level. And the last thing is kind of a fun tip, is just use whiteboards and chalkboards with your kids when they're doing their math. At one point I had gotten the little whiteboards at Dollar Tree, and my kids would write out their math problems on the whiteboard with the little expo marker, and it was just something fun. You know, it was not writing in a notebook or not just doing it on the computer, but you know, they could write it, they could erase it more easily if they had to, they could use different colors, and it just breaks up the monotony of math. You know, again, I will say it, some people think that math is fabulous and love to do it. And there are other kids who just really do need something to kind of shake things up a bit. And sometimes doing math on something like a whiteboard is just enough to give them that little push so that they are going to want to put more of themselves into their work. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.